Chapter 3. Summer evenings. The summer of 1975 was warm and gentle. The kind of summer that made everything glow. The small town of Willow Creek seemed to move slower that year, as if time itself wanted to rest a little longer. Every evening, golden sunlight washed over the diner, the lake, and the narrow streets lined with maple trees. And somewhere between those sunsets, two hearts quietly began to fall in love. Sarah and Michael started to see each other more often. At first, it was small moments, coffee breaks during his errands, short conversations after her shift. But soon they began to meet intentionally. Sometimes Michael would wait outside the diner after work, leaning on his car, pretending to read a newspaper. When Sarah stepped out, tired but smiling, he would grin and ask, "Care for a walk?" She would laugh softly and reply, "Only if you promise not to talk about cars again." And he'd chuckle. "Deal." They walked along the main street where neon signs flickered, and the smell of fried food mixed with summer air. The jukebox at the diner often played Fleetwood Mac or the Carpenters, and their songs seemed to follow them wherever they went. Sometimes they stopped by the lake, where fireflies danced on the water, and the night air carried the scent of honeysuckle. One evening, Sarah sat on the hood of Michael's old Ford Mustang, her legs swinging lightly. The stars were beginning to appear one by one. She turned to him and said, "It's funny, isn't it? You live up there on the hill, and I live down here by the gas station. Yet somehow we ended up right here." Michael smiled, looking at her with quiet admiration. Maybe the hill was too far from the stars. "I had to come down to see them." Sarah blushed and shook her head. "You always say things like that. Do you talk to all girls this way?" He laughed softly. "No, just you." For a moment the world was still. The sound of crickets filled the silence, and the reflection of the moon shimmered on the lake. Sarah looked down at her hands and whispered, "You know, I used to dream about leaving this town. I thought if I could go somewhere else, maybe life would be different." Michael leaned closer. "Different how?" She smiled faintly. "I don't know. Maybe a little more exciting. Maybe a little more beautiful." He paused, his voice gentle. "It's already beautiful, Sarah. You just don't see it yet." She looked at him then, really looked, and in that moment, something changed. The world seemed quieter, smaller, and everything she'd ever wanted suddenly felt right in front of her. As the weeks passed, their connection deepened. Michael brought her old records, the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, Carole King, and they listened together in her small living room after work. Sarah's parents liked Michael. Her mother often brought out lemonade or homemade cookies whenever he visited. Her father, though cautious, smiled kindly and said, "You seem like a good man, son." Michael respected them deeply. He admired the warmth of Sarah's home, the laughter, the music, the way love seemed to live in every corner, even if money didn't. It was a kind of happiness he had never known on the hill. At his own house, things were different. His parents began to notice his late evenings, his distant thoughts. One night at dinner, his mother, Eleanor, asked gently, "Michael, dear, you've been out quite a bit lately. Is there someone special?" Michael hesitated, setting down his fork. "Her name is Sarah," he said softly. "She works at Daisy's diner." There was silence. His father looked up, his expression unreadable. "A waitress?" he asked after a moment. "She's not just a waitress," Michael said quickly. "She's smart, kind, and—" "Michael," Richard interrupted, his tone firm. "You know our family's reputation. People talk in this town. You can't just—" "She makes me happy," Michael said quietly. His mother's eyes softened, but his father's jaw tightened. "Happiness doesn't pay the bills. You're a Thompson. You have responsibilities." The conversation ended there, but Michael couldn't forget his father's words. That night he sat outside on the porch, staring down at the town below, the lights glowing softly like a dream he couldn't let go. A few days later, he met Sarah again by the lake. He didn't tell her about the conversation. He didn't want to bring the world's weight into their little universe. Instead, they sat side by side, their shoulders brushing, watching the moon reflect on the calm water. Sarah broke the silence first. "You ever wonder what life will be like in 10 years? Michael smiled faintly. "I think about it all the time. And what do you see?" she asked, looking at him. He turned to her, his eyes warm and certain. "I see you." Sarah felt her heart flutter, a mix of joy and fear. She wanted to believe him, wanted to imagine a future where love was enough. But deep down, a small voice whispered that love alone might not be strong enough to change the world. She tried to ignore it. For now, under the summer sky, everything felt perfect. They talked until the stars faded and the horizon turned pale with dawn. When Michael finally drove her home, she leaned out of the car window and said softly, "Good night, Michael." "Good night, Sarah," he whispered, watching her until she disappeared inside. And as the sun rose over Willow Creek, two souls, one from the hill and one from the valley, continued to dream of a love that could outlast everything. And that summer would be remembered not for its heat or its storms, but for the quiet promise made beneath the stars. A promise that love, no matter how fragile, could be the strongest thing of all.